Mr. Fool Nelson. How's it going?
It's fantastic. Check out the
Fantastic.
gear.
There you go. Nice. You came prepared.
Yeah, baby. I'm probably going to turn off the camera, though, because I might be moving around my apartment because I get a little bit ADD'd out.
Hey, no problem. Well, yeah, man, I really appreciate you doing this. I know we've been talking about this for like a week now, and then obviously, like today's just like an odd day to do it because we had so much news come today. But
Yeah, a
um,
lot of great stuff, I guess. If you can call it great, I have no idea.
yeah. Well, I mean, obviously, like you and I have been on like a bunch of spaces chats together and stuff, but you've never done like a formal kind of like interview before, have you?
Like,
Oh, fool, did we lose you?
am I here?
There
Am
you
I
go.
here?
Yeah, yeah.
I think when I turn off the screen, like, it faded out. Okay.
I got
Did you
you.
hear what I said?
No.
Oh, I said like I might have done one like a long time ago, but definitely not recently.
All right.
I mean, if you count the one with Taibbi, that was more of like a sleuth one, but
Yeah,
that
that's
wasn't just me.
yeah. Well, you know, I obviously kind of wanted to put this together. I mean, Russiagate really hasn't been in the spotlight for a number of months now, but
Yep.
um, you know, we'll put this together, and maybe future generations, be able to look back and look at the guy that was right about all this. So,
Yes.
um, I mean, I wrote down some questions. Obviously, this is going to be free flowing, and as much wherever you want this to go to, we can go
Yep.
to. You know how it is. Um,
I'm
so I
down for
mean,
whatever.
starting off, I mean, I'm trying to do this with like people that really don't know you in mind, and I mean, just starting
Yeah,
off,
because I figured that yeah, that's probably the best way to do it. Actually, that's dope. Okay, cool.
yeah. I mean, starting off, I mean, as much as you're comfortable sharing, do you want to tell us a little bit about your background and like who you are in the world?
Oh yeah. I'm Fool Nelson. No, I guess. I mean, what in my background, like how much you want to go in? Like, oh, I was born in 1987, but no. I'll just say that I've always been. I mean, first of all, I consider myself an athlete.
Okay.
Second of all, I would consider I've always been like very academic. I would say got straight A's like basically in high school, in college. Um, my interests mainly have been anything that I always like. My dad would always say like I wouldn't have been able to go to college unless like I did biology or something like that because I forcefully said that like I don't give a shit about like human made stuff. So
Mhm.
I was like um what's that called when you what's that called when you don't have a major? It,
Undeclared.
undecided or whatever it was until like junior year, but I pretty much knew I was going to do biology. So studied biology, was pretty good at that. In like high school, my best was like math and stuff. But yeah, biology was my interest, um, scholastically, academically. Um, and then after that, I went into I worked from like Monsanto a little bit. Worked in biomedical research. That's what I do now. I'm a scientist. So I'm a researcher. I've always been a researcher. I know how to research good. But yeah,
But you've
that's
never
pretty
been
much
like
my background.
you've
What's
never
that?
worked at CIA or anything like
Oh
that.
no.
Okay.
No.
I mean, that's
But
pretty much.
actually, that's part of like I would go like, why am I doing this? Like, I mean, my dad was in the FBI, so like
Mhm.
I know a lot about like governmental stuff because he was in the FBI. And no, we're not deep state family. Blah blah blah. Do you think he's happy about what's happened to the FBI that used to be which he an institution he used to be very proud of? Not so much anymore. Um, then why am I here now? Why am I talking to you, Ryan? Is because like maybe like 2013, 14. It's kind of weird because it goes back to Ukraine again. It's like back then when Obama, like I didn't really pay attention that much to politics at all. Like in my like late teen years, high school years to to early adulthood, college years. Didn't really care that much about it. Like, it just seemed like a corrupt system, blah, blah, blah. Then, like, when Obama's like second term, when all that Syria shit and all that Ukraine stuff, like, I started like paying attention because I knew something was like very wrong. And it was like, why are we doing like, just doing all this regime change stuff? I started studying that. Then when Trump started running and he started talking about, like, just saying stuff that I really agreed with, like, why are we in all this foreign stuff? Why are we doing all this regime change stuff? Why don't we have peace? I was mainly on the foreign policy side with him. I didn't really care that much about domestic policy for that. Like, I've always been like a classical libertarian type of person where I'm definitely like capitalist, but you can do whatever you want, like in your social life, blah, blah, blah. But when he started talking about his foreign policy, that's when I started becoming interested in him. I didn't vote for him. I didn't even vote like in 2016 or whatever, because I'm like, I don't like. It's not like I believe him. Hillary was a disaster. I knew like if Hillary was like was president, we'd probably all be dead now. Like, it would have been like Biden, but like it would have been like with ISIS and like Syrian disasters, and like I don't even know what the hell would happen. Like, it would have been an absolute apocalyptic scenario, Armageddon. I would say Armageddon more than apocalypse, because I kind of like the apocalypse idea, which I think is like sort of unfolding now, and everything is just like collapsing. It's like, oh yeah, we just live in an absolute corrupt society, and it's all like Trump shook it. Like, Scott Adams did a nice like tweet about like how Trump like basically just like brought forth the apocalypse, because it's like the press couldn't resist him, and they just made themselves out to be such fools. The DNC, the Democrats, totally showed their ass, like with fucking Steele and all that. Can I cuss on this? Because that's how I talk normally. So sorry about that. Huh?
I warn people, so you're good.
Yeah. Okay. Cool. Because that's how I actually just speak. Sorry about that. I'm not the most eloquent person. But yeah, so when Trump came in, and I was like, oh yeah, this guy's interesting, but I'm like, whatever, he's just gonna get in and put like neocons in, but that didn't actually happen. But given my propensity to be like, we need to get this like Ukraine Russia thing sorted out. They can help us. Like, China, like communism, like is what I'm definitely against. It's like, if we can pull, like, I remember back then, I'm like, we can pull Russia away from this and just have them on our side. And Trump was talking about that. I'm like, that would be great. And then we can just fight. Then we can load up against China or whatever. But then this stupid freaking Russiagate thing happened, and that like completely destroyed any chance of that and any peace in that sort of situation. I mean, he was doing great in the Middle East. He got rid of ISIS and stuff like that. But Mueller, Crossfire, Hurricane, it pissed me off so much. And I'm like, all right, I need to actually figure out what the hell is going on, because the press, the media is shamelessly being ridiculous, and like all this, like Sarah Carter and John Solomon at that time was doing some decent reporting. Like, they're like, when they're in Circuit News, it's like the only little glimpses you had into like Russiagate of oh, you got some Peter Strzok and Lisa Page text messages, etc. But there's something, like, people were talking about, there's definitely something going on here, that they're spying on Trump, and obviously, like, with the when the Steele dossier came out and stuff like that, it's like, all right, what the hell is going on here? And that led into Mueller, which should have never happened. Comey was a disaster. What he did in July of 2016 to exonerate Hillary, to come out there and say all that stuff. I mean, that whole scenario is ridiculous. First, the mid-year exam, whole investigation, blah blah blah. But for what he did while Trump was like, when we started figuring out that he was basically spying on Trump, sort of extorting him a little bit, like telling him about like the Steele dossier. My dad actually like met with like Comey, I remember, in September like 2016, and he told him some shit that was. My dad was like, "What the hell is wrong with you? Like, why did you come out there? Like, if I would have said that as like an SAC or an AD or something like that, I'd be fired immediately." And he was like, I think he like told my dad that he definitely. Well, this is what I remember what he said. He was like, yeah, like, I had to come out because I know people in other like field office were like gonna mutinize if I didn't say something or something like that. Crazy stuff. But anyways, that's what got me interested in that. That's a little bit of my background. I don't know if you want to know any of my background. It doesn't really matter to me. you can fire away the questions. But that's kind of the lead up and why I'm here now, I guess.
Yeah, and obviously, like a lot of our talk is going to talk about Rushgate, but I guess even going back a little bit further, back to into your background. I mean, when the Snowden disclosures came out, did that register with you at all? Did you look at the Snowden stuff?
Yeah. Well, I mean, like I did, and I paid attention to it, like not as much, but I was like, okay, like I remember Clapper coming out there back then, and I'm like, what is going on here? You know, it's like it was obviously that our government was spying on us, and I mean, back then, like it was obvious, but the extent and like the ways they do it now, it's like, oh my god, like of course, like they're still doing it, guaranteed.
And then, I mean, you just kind of touched on it, but one of my questions was like, when did you start taking an interest in Rushgate? I mean, was there like a couple different events that kind of prompted you? Like, when did it transition from you as just like a regular person out there in the public to be like, okay, I want to go look at something?
Yeah, because like that was probably like early 2000. Well, I mean, I was like paying attention to it because I was really mad about it. Because at the time, I was like around a lot of liberal people, and they're like, "Whoa, Russiagate! Like Trump's definitely a Russian spy." I'm like, no, this is like an absolute coup. This is ridiculous. Because I already knew like the government, like I knew the federal government was like absolutely against Trump from the beginning. That they were going to do this. Like when Schumer came out and said like 6 ways from Sunday or whatever the hell he said. Like I knew the capabilities from what I'd already known about what they were doing in the Middle East and Ukraine and Libya and all this other stuff. So I'm like, yeah, they're going to take him out. So I was so mad when and they actually were doing a really good job. I mean, a really good job at that. And it was obviously corrupt. They kept on doing these leaks and there was nothing behind it. And I remember when like and then they're going after like, oh, Nunes went and met with people in the old executive building, and then Nunes, remember he got sort of suspended from being hipsy and whatnot. And it's like, what is going on here? Because he started talking about, yeah, they're spying on him. It's the unmasking and other things. I can't remember if you said it back then, but yeah, there's something going on here. Yeah. So that's what got me interested. I'm like, there's definitely a different story behind this from what we're hearing. But then Mueller got appointed, and then sort of stuff went dark. But you got little leaks there. But I remember like, I forget what exactly got me because I mean actually I was paying attention on Twitter because I was talking to my dad about it too, and he's like, yeah, something's up here. And I was like on Twitter, and like I forget how I got into there or something like onto like Jeff Carlson was one of the bigger accounts then, and he had this like little group of people, which is like the corner basically. And I just sort of like all of a sudden I didn't like really use Twitter until early like 2018, I think. Yeah, something like that. And then I started interacting with those guys. I remember because yeah, it was like Walk of Fire and Larry Beach and Jeff Carlson and Joe Stradamus back then when he and I know like Thunder B and all of them were there. So I like came like a little bit after them, but interacted with them. We started like going through documents, whatever we could get our hands on. And like back then it was like, oh, like we were just trying to like it was a lot of hypotheses of what happened. People just do threads of like what could happen. Like that's what like Stealth Jeff, like Brian Cates was doing a lot back then. It's like, oh, what could possibly be happening? Because we didn't have like enough information back then. So we were just digging into anything we could find. I remember like some like the stories like Chuck Ross had released like the Halper story that he spied on Papadopoulos and stuff like that. So we get like little nuggets back and forth. So like it became like a very big interest because there was tons of stuff coming out of the Mueller crap, and we got like little nuggets like about like Peter Strzok or whoever, and then and it built on that. We get documents sometimes, and because the Republican, because that's when like the Nunes memo, and it was like the opposition against that was so ridiculous. And you start learning more about the Steele dossier. Obviously, when the Steele dossier came out, that was early January 2017. But I was paying attention. I just wasn't interacting with anybody because I was doing some other shit. But at some point, I was like, oh, yeah, I could help out here.
I mean, I think like a regular interviewer who obviously I know, but like, how would you describe the corner? Like, how many people is it? Like, how do they interact? Like, is it all organic or like? I think
Oh
that's
yeah,
really
it's like very organic. Like I don't know, like yeah, it's like organic. Like everybody's very independent. It's like just a sort of like a loose thing. There's not really there's nobody running it or anything. Yeah. But yeah, it's just like you interact in the replies. A lot of like actually more of it's in DMs these days. I would say we do a lot of DMing. But yeah, that's how it's always been. Like just like replying to each other. Uh, just throwing kernels out there. But yeah, it's just a loose conglomerate of people who care about what the hell's going on and trying to figure out the truth. Basically, some are better at it than others.
yeah, that's fair.
It's like Dawson like was in there like I mean, he's been in it, but he's just like a psychopath. But
Do
yeah,
you consider him part of the corner?
huh?
You actually consider him like part
I
of the
mean, he's like, yeah, he's always like, I mean, like nobody listens to him anymore. But back then, he would come out like when I started, like him and Joe Stradamus would always be like on this like, oh yeah, Comey's a White Hat stuff, and we didn't know. We just like listened to him like, okay, like him and Sergeant Friday or whatever. That's interesting. Like, yeah, he interacted with us like a lot, but I was always like, nah, dude, you're an idiot. But I mean, like, I don't like hate him or anything, but like, it's just like, but but we didn't know anything back then, so it's just like, okay, that could be, but most definitely not. But at some point, it just got like too ridiculous. So like, I don't know if like anybody really interacts with that dude anymore. I certainly don't, because it's just like embarrassing now. But like back then, when we knew nothing, it's like, oh, could it be a stinging stinger on my stingy? Potentially, it could just be all a coup, and that Trump is indicting himself now, or getting indicted like 91 times just to flip on the deep state. Nah, dude. Nah, dude. You're an idiot. But yeah, like I mean, nobody. I call them Comey tards or whatever, but I don't really interact with those. I distinctly ask people not to bring me into that shit anymore
yeah, yeah.
because
It's not
he's a
worth
psych. Yeah, exactly. So, but the rest, yeah, it's been great. Like that's what I love about like my followers. Like I feel like I have like a relationship with like thousands of people. I don't know. It's not that big, but like I know like so many of my followers. But yeah, I love it.
it. I mean, obviously, like we talk about the corner, and I think everybody has kind of had, like, at least some of the major ones have had, like, individually, they've had some good finds. But you've been at the center of basically every major find that's developed in the public. I mean, there's been some significant events, and like I was thinking the other day, like Igor Danchenko, you played a big role in identifying him, and if not for the Durham indictment, or and not until the Durham indictment, nobody would have known who he was without
Yeah,
your work and obviously a handful of others. But you've been at the center of like a whole bunch of different identifications between Charamella. I actually
yeah.
grabbed a few screen grabs, but like, what do you consider your biggest like finds?
So like, so yeah, when that impeachment was going down, I'm the first person to go, oh yes, Charamella's the whistleblower.
Hmm.
But like that name is was floated around like a little bit like by like Posobiec, and I remember like Rising Serpent and maybe like other people. But I'm the first one to go, it's Charamella. Then, but I feel like even bigger than that was like 2 days later I figured out that he was in this meeting with with these Ukrainian prosecutors like in January 19th, 2016, which I figured because I was like looking at the White House logs. I remember like Larry Beach or like FOIA fan like told me to look at the White House logs or something like that. So I'm like, all right. And so I found this meeting with Charamella, and I'm like, okay, I recognize these Ukrainian prosecutors' names. It's like David Karveletsky, like basically like the deputy prosecutors for Shokin at the time. Then the NABU director Artem Sitnik. Um, then their special like corruption prosecutor, I forget his name. But anyways, I saw that in like the White House logs, and then I went to this John Solomon article that talks about like how in this meeting, like in the middle of January 2016, there was like this meeting between the National Security Council, the White House, and these Ukrainian prosecutors, and the main discussion, supposedly according to John Solomon and Andrei Teleshenko, who's a good friend, was that they were talking about first of like Burisma, Hunter Biden, basically that like thing, because these guys were against Shokin, who went over there. Basically, his deputies were trying to get him out so they could probably be prosecutor general of Ukraine or whatever, and also to help with investigations of Americans like involved with the Party of Regions, Yanukovych, not Yushchenko. Sorry, I was just listening to that Putin interview. And Yanukovych, which basically points to Paul Manafort. But at the time, we didn't know that like they actually had opened like an investigation again into Paul Manafort January 12th, I think. So like once I figured out that he was involved with that, like I found that White House that he was in that meeting, and I put those together. I posted that like I think like 2 days later, maybe like October 10th or something, 2008, 18, 19. I can't remember. But that's what I figured like was my very first find that was like very important, because I remember because Adam Schiff came out, it's like, oh yeah, we want to talk to the whistleblower, we're going to talk to the whistleblower. Then I posted that, and that like both of those things like went pretty viral. I posted that like that Eric Ciaramella might have been involved with basically the genesis of sort of Russiagate, but also with this getting the prosecutor fired or whatever. Which later, like Rich Higgins, rest in peace, who was in National Security Council, he told me that like Ciaramella probably ran like the Ukraine desk. It was talking to NABU and maybe got like the Black Ledger, Manafort Black Ledger release, something like that. Who knows if that's true? But so I found that out, and then after I think I remember I was like at the gym like on a Saturday, and I posted that, and I'm like, this is gonna get. I was like with my friend Andrew, and I was like, this is gonna be very viral, because like my phone was like blowing up like both of those times I was at the gym, and I'm like, and then the day after that, I remember Schiff went on there. It's like, we don't want to hear from the whistleblower. We're not interviewing the whistleblower. So I think I'm not like people think it was. I forget why the Democrats changed their tone, but I almost guarantee it's because I posted that, because I linked them to that, and once they saw that this guy was involved with some Joe Biden corruption, because he worked under Joe Biden then, and once I hit that, that's when they kind of shut down. They're like, we're not interviewing the whistleblower anymore. It's not that I named him, because after I named him, they were fine. Like it was fine. He was gonna get interviewed. But once I linked him to that, no. I remember Schiff came out like that Sunday, I think, like on Meet the Press or whatever it was, and he's like, no, we're not interviewing the whistleblower anymore, because they would have eaten him alive once they knew about that. And then like a few months later, like Laura Ingraham like posted that. But that's like was my first like big find, which was like actual breaking news stuff.
Yeah,
that might have shut down the impeachment inquiry. And now, and people still don't even report that Eric Ciaramella is a whistleblower, like till this day, even though I've had like multiple reporters tell me it was him, which is obvious. But
yeah, it's really weird how that developed, and then it's like you can't even say his name, which obviously, I mean, everybody knows who it is. So it's
I'd love to see like Elon Musk like the Twitter files on that, because that was a weird thing, man.
Yeah, that's a good point. I bet there's a lot of weird stuff in those communications. And then, I mean, obviously, like Danchenko, you played a big role in that, especially sources.
Yeah, so like once the Horowitz report came out and we started digging into that, we like really were like, who is this like primary subsource? Like me, Steve, McIntyre, Hans, and Walkerfire working on it heavily. And we're like, if we can figure this out, then we can really figure out how this dossier was created. Because we knew it was garbage, but we wanted to like know who created the garbage and why and whatever. And we knew and like from the report, it's like, oh yeah, this all came from one primary subsource. So we were really trying to get more information about that. And then once like Lindsey Graham released that electronic communication or whatever interview of it, then that was unfortunate, because I was like on the way. It was like my birthday weekend, and I was on the way to like Lake of the Ozarks. So I didn't. I remember I was like driving, and it came out. I like pulled over and like looked at it for a bit. I'm like, all right, cool. We can probably figure this out because Walk of Fire can definitely give us some counts and whatever. And like by the time, yeah, like I didn't get a check on it much over the weekend. I think like on Sunday, what was like I think my birthday was like on a Saturday or Sunday or whatever. But anyways, I think like that's when like people were like looking at it a lot, and then he posted it to me or whatever, and I was like, oh yeah, I think that's definitely him. And I know like Walk of Fire had that as one of the guys he was going to look at. But like once we got Danchenko filled in, then I'm like, all right, I'm going to scrape like all the Facebook stuff, get all that done. And then we just started filling out all the other sources. And that's when you could really tell it's just fake, you know? Because like once you're like, oh, Ivan Vorontsov's some like gay dude who like dresses in drag and stuff like that. And it's like, oh, that's the guy who was talking about the P tape potentially. No, who cares? And it just like all just fell apart from there. It's like Olga Galkina was the one who made up like the Cohen stuff. Yeah, so like once we started filling that out, like that's what I feel like Russiagate was killed. Like not just that was released, but like once we figured out, like once figured out like it was Danchenko and we started filling it in, like the entire thing just collapsed. Like it's just like, oh, this was just a dude talking about his shit with like his friends, and it's just like gossip and stuff like that. And
well, yeah, especially when you got the sub sources, right? I mean, once you realize that these people are not like
they're not like Kremlin. Yeah, they're not high up in the Kremlin. They're nothing. Yeah, that's why I really wanted like to figure out them all out, just to be like all right, these guys aren't legitimate at all. And then like that pushed forward into like we got them interviewed like in like a lawsuit, like to all of them were basically signed affidavits that like none of this shit came from me actually, except for like Galkina hedged on something, but
yeah, that's fine. And there's actually some interview transcripts that we still haven't seen. I know like Vorontsov said in his sworn affidavit that the FBI pulled him out of like the ambassador's house.
Yeah, like in June 2016 or something. I think I don't know if he got the date wrong, but that's an interesting thing.
Yeah, I actually hit him up one time on Facebook, and I asked him, and he couldn't clarify whether it was 2016 or 2017. So
yeah,
either way, I mean that, you know, by the time, even in 2017, I think by the time they interviewed him, like the FISA warrants were still out there. So like they should have went back to the FISA court with, you know, Vorontsov basically saying, no, I didn't give Danchenko any of this.
Yeah.
Obviously that's something
we talked about. It was wild, and like I mean, there's still like some information in there that I'd maybe like in that electronic communication that I'd like to figure out, but it's not like that big of a deal anymore. We figured out like most of it. Yeah. But yeah, once we like put that all together, like the entire thing just like fell apart, and especially like when Ratcliffe like released that letter, it's like, oh, okay, yeah, this is a complete scam, and it was always a scam, and I knew that from the beginning, and I'm like. And it's just amazing they went forward with this Mueller crap, and it's just like a disaster. And especially like seeing Biden like today, and he's just completely demented, and Mueller was like just as demented. It's like, oh my god, nobody ever talked about that.
Yeah,
and it's like it's unbelievable how corrupt like this shit is.
It is. It is mind blowing. I mean, I want to dig more into that a little bit in a few minutes. I was gonna introduce like your other identification that I think. Is the one that I had in mind, and that's Rodney Jofy, which is, you know, it predated the Sussman indictment came out the next day. But, you were actually
that was unfortunate
together, and then you know you were able to pull out some information based on the Alpha Bank civil case docket and put this together.
Yeah, so, I had my eyes on with that one. Like that was always a weird. So like I thought that was just going to be like a little peripheral thing, the Alpha Bank thing, where we were always like trying to figure out like who the hell did that, and I would always go through that, and I like looked up like who are all the experts in God, I'm so bad at like tech crap. What's it called? The oh my god, it starts with a D. Starts with a D. What are they experts in? They're like experts in the
DNS.
it's like the phone. DNS. Sorry, the phone book thing. So I was like trying to look up experts, and I remember like I came across. Well, first of all, like the weaponized autism came out with that blog post and about April Lorenzen. So I'm like, all right, let's build off this. Let's have the hypothesis that April Lorenzen is tea leaves. So let's look into people that worked with her. They're close to her. So I knew that. So like digging into that, I knew that David Deon was a DNS expert, like one of the best. Actually, I had a source like back then who told me that I like asked him about this because I was looking into it, and he gave me like some experts in DNS, and he did mention what was their company called that starts with a D too, I think. Before they went to Georgia Tech, or maybe while they're at Georgia Tech. But what's it called?
Damballa.
Yeah, Damballa. So like, yeah, he told me about Damballa and Team Cymru and some other things. So Deon was on my radar already. So when I saw that Lorenzen thing, so I'm like, all right. So I looked up Lorenzen and I realized that she was working at MOG, that malware association or whatever. And Deon she worked with, and she worked with him on some other stuff. So I'm like, all right, Deon's on my radar. Then in the Alpha Bank lawsuit against
John Doe.
No, it's not. It wasn't that one. It was against Fusion GPS or whatever.
Oh yeah.
So they got like some discovery, and they left in like emails like something about Dogen or whatever, like in the email heading. And I'm like, Dogen, what does that mean? And then like it was something about in Georgia. And I'm like, maybe they just misspelled Deon. So that really like put it on my radar that I think Degon's involved here. Because I think they just misspelled Dogen, or they like when they're giving the documents to Alpha Bank or whatever, they like mixed up they changed the name in there or something like that so people wouldn't figure out it's Deon. I don't know what it is, but if they just spelled it wrong or if they did that on purpose, that'd be interesting. But anyways, that like stuck out to me that I think the Georgia connection because it was like this suburb of Atlanta, Georgia, and Dogen. I'm like, maybe they're talking about Deon. So I'm like, boom, I think he's involved. And then we were like, that was weird, like that. Yeah, the day before the indictment came out, but like 2 days before that, Johnny Deep, I forget what he was going by, and he started like posting like some images, and we're like, where the hell is that from? Like Walk of Fire already knew about these lawsuits, or those John Doe lawsuits, and like we hadn't looked at like the Palm Beach one or for a while. Then we looked up on there, and like the people they were trying to subpoena or whatever was Jofy, Deon. So I like looked into Joffy's background or whatever, because like the only thing we had for like Max was that he was like a John McCain Republican or blah blah blah, but DNS expert. And like, okay, but I'd actually seen Joffe before that. I just didn't think it was him because I thought it was more of not somebody that high up or something like that. There was tea leaves involved or Max or whatever, but or more of an expert. But anyways, but then I looked into him. He like had donated to some Arizona something or other. And then like I looked at him, he got like a MOG award. He knows all these guys. So I'm like, all right, that's him. I think this is Max. And then I posted that the day before, and then the indictment came out. And then like that indictment came out, and immediately I was like, I think it's Rodney Jofy, and like the university was Georgia Tech, because I'd already done that originator one is like April Lorenzen, and I'd already done the research around Georgia Tech. So I'm like, and the university is Georgia Tech because I already knew about Deon. And like, and I just basically like filled it in like fairly easily because I already did the research, and like then you could find the grant like that it was Georgia Tech. So like I just filled the entire thing out and like ta-da. And I remember like people were coming after me like, "Are you sure about this?" Well, I'm like, "Yeah, I'm definitely sure about this." And then turned out that I just the day before I had named them, and then the next day just filled it out. And I think people were kind of like shocked by that, but I wasn't.
Yeah. And then, I mean, there's actually a source that reached out, like, it was actually like a month or two after the indictment. And he started telling us about like the attribution piece of it, which is still something to develop in the future. But I mean, that's kind of what I wanted to lead for like the next section is like,
Sure.
if you could have like free access to like documents or to like get documents out or to like interview witnesses, like where would you start?
Oh, I'd go and get like the CrowdStrike reports and just like any of the like the attributions, anything that backed up the Neck show and indictment, things like that. Um, things we don't really know, because I would like to figure out like who was behind the attribution, like how strong is the data, what were the Arizona servers, things like that, the Illinois servers. Yeah, and I mean, like, I wish the Alpha Bank lawsuit would have kept going, because they're going to get a lot of good information. I think they're going to breach. I mean, they're going to do more than Durham. I think they're going to breach. What's it called? Client.
Reality.
What was that called? Yeah, they're going to breach that immunity, stuff like that. There was going to be a gold mine there, I think. But yeah, it all kind of went away. But things like that, I would like to get those reports, get the ICA, like the full unredacted ICA, the actual report. And I mean, we could get the Hipsy report on it too, but just give me the actual report too. But there's a lot of things I would like to know from that. Who knows if we'll ever see it, but those are some of them. Yeah, I would love to see like what's under the redactions of whatever CrowdStrike reports Sussman gave to him.
I guess
Anything else?
What's your
I don't know.
sense? If you had to guess, if you had to speculate, like, what's your sense of the DNC hack and the attribution? Do you think it's a false flag operation, like all the way? Do you think the attribution just maybe messed up? Do you think everything's fine and it's just like a weird incident that prompted?
I don't think everything's fine. That's the weirdest thing. Like the whole Guccifer 2 thing was definitely not Russian. Like they wouldn't. There's no point of them doing that. Like why would they? It doesn't make any sense to me. I don't think the DNC hack, whoever gave it to Assange, wasn't Russia. That doesn't make any sense.
Yeah.
Something's off there, and especially like the whole. We still don't even know. Like they always talk about, like, oh, this person forgot to log onto a VPN while they're doing these hacking operations, and that's how they got in. That's how they found out it was GRU or whatever. I don't really believe that. Like the whole what do they call that? The Arizona panel and the Illinois stuff. Like how
Yep.
Why they were doing that? Whose servers did they get? Like I feel like. Yeah, the stuff coming out of that server could look like Russian or what, or I forget which way it would be, but like I don't know, like something could be like whenever I see that Alpha Bank was spoofed, like that's what it looks like. Like the spoofery could be on that side too. So I don't trust anything those guys are involved in, but who knows?
Yeah, I mean,
I don't trust the story at all. I know, like, so like APT 29 Cozy Bear was definitely in the DNC servers, like, and stuff like that. They're in the State Department, they're in DNC, they're in the White House, they're everywhere. Then all of a sudden, GRU piggybacks off of them, and they're in there too, into the DCCC, or was it DCCC? Yeah, DNC, and they're just piggybacking off of APT 29 and stuff like that. It's like it's too coincidental, and everything following that was too coincidental, especially because like Assange was saying, like, oh yeah, I'm going to release these emails before we even knew anything, before he was ever in contact with Guccifer 2.0 and stuff like that. There's way too much shit out there to have that be believable. The story, and especially how they're hiding it and stuff like that. So
yeah, I mean, I feel like everything that was damning, like anything that would have been supportive of the narrative, I feel like would have leaked, because we saw so much leak out. But then it's like all the technical data, and like if you read like the cyber experts, they're all like they could actually release more information on this, and then we could actually verify like.
Yeah, I've talked to like cyber experts that like were deeply into it, and now they're like, I'm not sure. I'm like, the more I look into it, like, yeah, there's something going on here. The people that are working on it, like, and we're actually cited a lot. So
Yeah,
they're like, I think they're like they're giving access to certain data, but now they look at it in a different light, that they're leading them on and stuff like that. So I don't know.
yeah. I mean, I think we talked to like at least one of the same people, and it was like, and, yeah, it's like they were actually quoted, and like they're still cited as like somebody that like supported the attribution to Russia initially, and now
Yep.
they're not so confident anymore, and
Yep.
that's pretty interesting.
I mean, the more you learn about it, like the background. I mean, even like the Georgia Tech guys weren't even confident in like CrowdStrike stuff and whatever.
Yeah, and
So
then we have the emails from like the Georgia Tech files where they're saying, well, your attribution is spoofable, just like CrowdStrikes, and it's like, well, okay, that's I was talking
yep.
to one cyber expert, and they were telling me that a lot of it depends on the data that they actually use for the attribution, and if they use like a third party vendor.
That's what I'm saying. Like if you get if they're getting the data, they're only using the data they can get, because like the Georgia Tech guys were getting data from Joffe and from what's that other,
Like Newstar or Packet Forensics.
yeah, well, Newstar mainly, and then I think probably Packet Forensics, but that other domain tools, they're getting data from them. So like you're only as good as the data you get. So it's not, and like Manos was like a little bit concerned with the data, it seemed like.
Yeah,
So
well, we have like a couple emails where it's like CYA. It's like really,
yeah.
really far. And he actually says something about, we have a duty to report malice in your data. And it's
Hmm.
like, okay, that's kind of
Yeah.
weird.
Yeah.
Um, I mean, do you see Rushgate as like done and like everybody should move on? Or do you see like there's still like major developments? Do you think we'll actually get to those like in a
I
Republican
think we
administration?
will. I think like I think that's just how like the apocalypse works. Like things don't remain hidden. We're gonna get the answers. It's just gonna be hard, but it's definitely not over, because there's definitely answers that still need to be answered. Questions that need to be answered. That's what I meant to say. But yeah, no, I don't think it's over. I think I don't know, whatever's happening right now in the world. Like it's just like tumbling. It's like it's very um, uh, exponentially just getting more ridiculous. So I feel like whatever was released today about Biden is just like, oh yeah, he's obviously senile and demented. It's like we did, like everybody knew that, but just this, it's very it's startling watching like a special counsel just say that stuff, and it's just like, oh yeah, like we've been trying to tell you. But I don't know. I think everything's gonna be uncovered in the apocalypse. I think it has to. So we're gonna learn whatever happened. And I
Yeah.
don't know how that's going to happen, but in some way it's going to come out.
Yeah, I hope so.
I think it will. I mean, you might be the one who does it. Let's create that. I'm gonna use my mysticism to create that, which I truly actually am trying to do. We'll see what happens. Because like you keep getting beaten down in other courts, but eventually you're gonna win. That's just what happens. You just have to keep pushing on. I mean, obviously it's financially shitty, but like,
Yeah.
if that's what you want to do, I think eventually you're gonna get justice.
I hope so. I mean, part of the motivation, I mean, like when I started out putting out like open records requests and stuff, it was like, especially when Margot got that first one back, and I was like, well, I can do this too.
Yeah.
And that I don't think I realized like I would actually get some documents that would like be valuable, and then like Margot joined back in with me, and so it's been pretty
Yeah,
interesting.
like it's been historical. Like that's like some of the best FOIA work out of Georgia that I've seen. And so I will never write a FOIA request ever. I can guarantee that. But like to see that happen, that was great. just set the world on fire with some, like, those were some of the best. Like, most of the FOIAs that you get from the federal government's, like, FOIA fan has like done so many of them, but you never like get like anything super meaty. Like, they're always either redacting it or like, like how when we got the Steele like 302 and it was leaked to Solomon, and it was just like, and we had it before, but it was like mostly redacted, but then like everything was open. It's like, holy shit. Like, that's where I got like the Victor Bidner and stuff like that. I'm guessing that's how it is with tons of these other documents, where like all the meat is like underneath those redactions, and it's just like stuff you would never even believe. So eventually you're going to get there.
That actually reminds me.
When you did like Georgia Tech, like when you were doing the Georgia Tech stuff, you were getting some very good emails. It's like, holy crap. Because that's state level and not federal. Federal is garbage.
Well, I just want to
go on.
So you can make all your finds and brilliant analysis. So anything I can do. But I wanted to make sure I asked you about like the shadow brokers, because you've had this on my radar for like a long time. I also want to ask you about the protectors. But like, you've had a couple things on my radar for a long time. Like, do you still think there's a nexus between the shadow brokers who leaked stolen NSA cyber tools and Guccifer 2.0?
Yeah, I think so. I don't know what it is exactly, but I think there is. Like, that's like the weirdest story ever. Like, it just got shut down. But the story and whatever happened, like the true story behind that and how it was taken from WinFuzz, like computer or whatever, there was something to do. Like, the story was like in October like 5th or whatever, 2018, I think, that they used Kaspersky antivirus software to get into Fuzz computer, and it was supposedly Russian hackers or whatever. Which like, and then Marcy says like they had like something had the same IP address as like Guccifer 2.0, and I think they're the same. I think first of all, I think these guys are like a group, whatever it is. If it's GRU, if it's whoever Guccifer 2.0 is, but I think there's like multiple people behind it. But I think they are probably connected to the shadow brokers. I don't know if the shadow brokers are. The other thing is, it's like I've done like a lot of research on some of these hacktivists, and I feel like some of them are into like there's like Russian hackers. Like there's obviously governmental hackers, GRU, FSB, what's the other one, SRV or whatever. But I think other people are like hacking. Like, just random hackers and hacktivists are like hacking into the hackers and like taking information. Because when I like study like Max Popov, he was getting the same info. Like, he had the same documents as like as Cyber Caliphate or whatever, or no, sorry, like Cyber Burkett or whatever. And I was like, how does he have these documents when Cyber Burkett is like releasing them, but he's releasing, and he has all these documents, and he's releasing even more on top of that when Cyber Burkett stopped releasing them. So I'm like, and Cyber Burkett it's always said to be like connected to GRU. It's like, are these other hacktivists or hackers or freelance hackers, are they hacking into, however, I don't understand hacking anyway. It's like, however, the GRU or FSB might be hacking. Like, somebody might be like on top. Like, the Russian government might not be releasing it, but other people might be hacking that shit from them. I don't know, but that's what it seems like to me for like shadow brokers and that. There's like signs of overlap, and I don't really get it. If that made any sense.
I
don't know. I think those guys are connected though, but who knows who they are?
If I remember correctly, I think the stolen cyber tools were a little bit outdated. I think the reporting was like they were from like a couple years before they were actually. Oh
yeah, they're like from like 2014 or something.
Yeah.
Yeah, because WikiLeaks claimed that they had it before. Like, that's the other thing, because WikiLeaks said they had those same cyber tools from a source just like they said they got like the DNC hacking thing from a different source, but then they're being released by other people that aren't their sources. You know what I'm saying? So it's like, how did a couple of these entities, two different entities, have the same stuff? So it's either like one of the people in the group like went rogue and started doing it by himself, which is very plausible, which I could see some like crazy guy like in one of the Gooseford 2.0 where Shadow Brokers is going rogue and release it to himself. Like some like smarter guys are like, okay, let's hack it and then release it to WikiLeaks. But then this other like random guys, it's like, I'm just going to do it myself.
Yeah.
So I don't know.
I think we've had a couple interesting theories about some of that stuff.
Yeah.
As far as the DNC Hack goes, I mean, given that, okay, there's some odd stuff around it. If it is a false flag operation, I just have to ask the question because we get the DMs, we get the replies all the time. I mean, is it Seth Rich or is it like, do you see it more like Clinton actually, like the Clinton campaign or Clinton operatives actually being the ones that are actually like leaking the DNC emails themselves?
I think it's like two-pronged. I think there was some guy who released the emails who gave it to WikiLeaks, and there might have been like a cover-up operation. But I really don't know. Like, it's not even worth like really even stating like my actual gut feeling because we don't know enough. Any of that shit could have happened, but I don't know.
Yeah.
But something it's not what Mueller said. That's what's guaranteed. That's not what happened.
Yeah.
But I mean like obviously like Kim.com, tons of people were saying it was Seth. Like even like the Chalupa interviews are very interesting about her mentioning Seth, that like, oh yeah, the Russians were hacking into Seth and me, they're the biggest targets. It's like, okay, that's weird. And Donna Brazil mentioned that too. But
I wouldn't be surprised if like they have like tampering evidence on the computers, and they would probably explain it away as like Russian disinformation, like planting evidence on Seth Rich's computer. Yeah. By the same token, I mean, if it's like a conspiracy, like people connected to the Clinton campaign could have planted that evidence too, that there's tampering on his computer or something like that, just to muddy the waters and screw everything up. And maybe Seth probably had no involvement whatsoever, and it's obviously tragic what happened to him. But
I have no idea. I mean, I feel like he did though, just from like the information that Chalupa said. I'm still like, how did like Ed Butowski's testimony of like how he even got involved doesn't make any sense unless unless Assange was mentioning him, which it could just be Assange just throwing smoke. But he definitely did tell that to I forget her name, that reporter that told Ed Butowski about it, and then he called up the parents about it. And the whole like Rod Wheeler saga is very interesting always too. I wonder what that guy's doing. But yeah, I don't know. We'll never know. No, like I said before, we will know. We're gonna know. We're gonna find out. But the thing is, like Mueller said, like, oh, we still don't know how. We don't know how the emails got to WikiLeaks. Like, there could be an intermediary that Andy Mueller Magoon was going over there all the time.
Well, I thought it was really bizarre that like Fusion GPS actually tried to provide an answer. Like I forget who they accused. It was some British guy, I think, that they said visited the embassy and might have seen Julian Assange around that time. It was just like totally ridiculous because like there's just no way Fusion GPS, like that's one of the first indications of bullshit is when they try to have answers to everything. And I thought it was just bizarre and probably a huge mistake on their part that like they tried to actually explain
to go that in depth.
Because the correct answer, like if you're actually like genuine, is you have no idea. Like I don't know how
Yeah.
but like this is the information that we actually have like substance on, reporting on.
Yep.
Yeah,
go ahead.
One more question. I mean, as far as like the government goes and like the FBI and Mueller, I mean, we have these emails now that are indicating that like Dagan and Antonakakis at least were actually like tasked or like working for Special Counsel Mueller, and it obviously like they knew, like people in the government knew that they'd already provided information on the Alpha Bank. They wanted to interview David Dagan in October, and they, the seventh floor of the FBI shut them down.
Mhm.
So like, what's your sense of like, is it just a bunch of incompetence, or do you think there's like real malfeasance inside the Department of Justice?
Oh, there's definitely malfeasance and definitely in the FBI. I mean, my dad always talks about it when Mueller came in and was director and just started filling the top of the FBI with a bunch of DOJ guys. And like, look at who's like chiefs of staff were, like Lisa Monaco and a bunch of like other like Dems and stuff like that. And Weissman worked for him. That's when it just completely just started becoming a corrupt political organization. Whether Mueller was at the time or not, which I heard he wasn't, but then he sort of just anybody like I hear about this like all the time when these guys get into DC and they start just hanging around with like the DC elites, they just start becoming corrupt. They just flip them, and that happens.
I
No
forget who it was,
joke.
but we had
And
somebody in the Spaces chat one time, and they were telling us like the leadership of the FBI had skewed more towards the counterintelligence division instead of the
yeah,
criminal division, and like the standard of evidence is so much different that like
yeah, Ship was talking about that, I think.
yeah.
Um, but yeah, it was basically when Mueller came in, and then he started bringing in his DOJ guys instead of FBI guys to put in all those top positions, and that continued with Comey and got even worse. And now it's just completely politicized because a lot of those DOJ guys are, first of all, they don't know how the FBI works, and they're just political dudes. They're like FBI people used to be, like Ship talks about it, like when the DOJ, but like FBI people were they used to be like ex cops, ex military dudes. But then they started wanting to go for these like law school grads or people with like college educate like like liberal arts like degrees and stuff like that, like highly educated people, like obviously more liberal minded people, ideologues, and that's why it's corrupt now. Because and those guys rise fast. Those briefers like McCabe and Struck, those counterintelligence dudes that don't like go out there. They're like analysts and stuff like that, and they're just sucking the director's dick or whoever their direct supervisor is, and they rise high, and now you have like a politicized FBI. Same thing happened in DOJ when Obama started like kicking out um, the more senior AUSAs and stuff like that are more seasoned. You bring in these more liberal-minded, progressive AUSAs right out of college, and they start ruining the DOJ. Like that's what did it.
How about the fusion cell? I wanted to ask you about like Brennan and like the construction of the ICA, obviously, but like the fusion cell, and then like sort of as part of like the foreign intelligence that we heard about early on, but like we've never heard anything more about like the supposed foreign intelligence that like had like Trump associates in contact with Russians and stuff like that. Or at least
Yeah, I mean, I'm pretty sure that like even before, like supposedly the fusion cell was like created like in early August 2016 or something like that. I think like August 2nd or something. Brennan said or whatever. But before that, they had like a group, like in what's that place called? Like that joint NCI JTF or something like that. That
yeah.
joint cell in Northern Virginia, where like I guess FBI, CIA, NSA, DHS, whoever, they have like they put a bunch of their guys together and they share information. It's basically like a fusion cell there, where it's a joint task force. And I think at that point, Brennan like hints at it. They're getting foreign, like 702, like they're spying on foreign people. But it's called reverse targeting, where in that vein, if you're targeting a foreign person, say in Ukraine, say they're targeting Konstantin Kilimnik with 702, then you can scoop up Paul Manafort's emails. or whatever. And say you want to like there's tons of unmasking, so you can unmask him. You can figure out, okay, you can spy on Paul Manafort by just spying on foreign people. So I think that was happening in pre Crossfire Hurricane, right? So I think Brennan even says that. So that's when you see like that Brennan was in contact with Konstantin Kalimnik, Victor Boykin. No, not Victor Boykin. Victor. Forget his name. Starts with a V.
I forgot.
Deripaska, whoever. What's that? Victor. He worked for Deripaska. Anyways, that's who Konstantin Kalimnik's thing. So he could do that. He could probably do it with any of the other guys, probably like Sergey, whoever in the Trump orbit. They could reverse target in the pre-fusion cell, and then once like the Crossfire Hurricane gets started up, they created the CIA fusion cell, and then like they had FBI detailees in there. But it pretty much was, I think, like what he said, is like pretty much the same people who were working on that. And that's where probably like Tejas Patel was like probably was in the Crossfire Hurricane fusion cell. But like immediately, like those guys picked up contacts, or like the foreign intelligence was from Dutch, of supposedly the inference that like a foreign policy advisor of Hillary Clinton was hatching like a scheme to link Trump to Russia and the hacked emails, etc. So like that fusion cell was getting that information from the foreign intel, which is probably the Dutch, who were supposedly inside of like APT 29 or Cozy Bear. And they're getting that information, which they didn't seem like they really wanted to act on at all, because they really wanted to investigate Trump and not like this scheme that the Clinton campaign was hatching, which turned out to be the Steele dossier.
Yeah, I mean, I just find it amazing. Like they had the alleged hack happen in April. They called in CrowdStrike. They did a remediation event early in June, and then we see these exhibits out of the Sussman trial, and it's like in late September, September 30th, and like October is when the FBI was finally getting around to asking for like the actual data and the images and stuff. And it's like between April and October, there was so much that happened. Like they opened all these investigations into Trump associates. They, were working on the FISA warrant for Carter Page, and it's like you didn't even go verify there was actually a hack. Like you didn't.
Yeah, exactly.
It's crazy.
That's why that's like when Mueller started like indicting like those Russians. I'm like, it's like you didn't even verify, like that Assange was like in contact with any of these guys, like anything like that. I'm like, how are you gonna? If you ever were gonna indict Trump, like you have to find the nexus between Assange and these guys, or you don't have anything. It's just like ridiculous.
Yeah, the entire thing is bizarre. I mean, I know we're both frustrated. Obviously, like nobody's kind of taking up the mantle, or maybe that we didn't get more from the Durham report. But
I mean, he flushed out so much information. It was like people like don't like the end of it, but he definitely uncovered a lot of good stuff that is never going to go away. Like he like uncovered basically a private like spying operation that we didn't really know about until then.
The court filings were great. I mean, and I know that's the way prosecutors are supposed to kind of communicate their findings, but we did learn so much during the trials. I mean, the Sussman trial, the Danchenko trial, I was actually there for the Sussman trial. You were there for the Danchenko trial, and like I remember, like those were fun experiences for me.
Oh yeah,
sitting there, but like
it's like a bullfight.
I was sitting I went in the courtroom one day. I was in the media room a couple days, like live tweeting the trial and stuff. And I just remember sitting in the media room with like all these prominent journalists, like, Pulitzer Prize winners and all that stuff. And I'm sitting there, and then like it was near close, and they introduced evidence that the flash drive on which the Alpha Bank materials were delivered to the FBI to Baker from Sussman actually took that and he billed it to the Clinton campaign. and there's like this audible gasp in the media room. It's pretty amazing. But
oh yeah, like when Durham like opened the door like on Danchenko potentially being like a Russian spy, that was amazing too. Just to see like the turn. It's like, but there was exculpatory evidence or against him that he's a Russian spy, and it's like went down his handler's throat, Helson or whatever his name was. Yeah, it was great. But going back to that, like, yeah, Durham could have should have. I don't know if he should. Like, he probably could have done more. But that thing was so hard to investigate because there wasn't like really just like a blatant crime. It's not like there was just like a murder, like where it's like, oh, you got to figure out who murdered this person. It's just like, was there a murder? Was this spoof data? All this other like shit. Like, it's hard to figure out. And I don't like a lot of it was very, is there a crime or not? So they had to like figure out if there was a crime. It's not like a blatant crime that happened, which like it was obviously criminal, but like to figure out what exact was it a conspiracy? Like to figure out if there was a conspiracy or not is like very hard because like it's hard to get like warrants and stuff like that without like having like a true crime. It's like a fishing expedition more than anything. So like I feel his pain on how like that'd be hard to investigate when you don't really have just like a nailed on crime like that.
yeah, I mean that's certainly true. I guess I'm just terrified of like living in a world where like if you just use encryption and like if you're just careful, you can pretty much do whatever you want and get away with it. Like you know,
well, because like the Alpha Bank stuff, like clearly they were lying to the FBI. Like they knew that what they were doing was political. That's what but I guess he gave immunity to Deon. Then who knows what was going on there, but I don't know. We still don't even know if the data is spoofed or not, so it's weird. It's weird shit.
Yeah, we don't know that it was spoofs, but like they did go to the marketing, the host of a marketing server, and they couldn't like verify the authenticity of the data. And then like, the CIA says it, doesn't withstand technical scrutiny. You have like the FBI agent saying like whoever put this together is 5150-ish, like they have mental issues. Like anybody that actually looked at it said like this is complete garbage. But then you have like these world-class DNS experts, and they're saying that it, the FBI should look at it. And then you have the emails that like,
hey, keep talking. I'm going to pee for like 10 seconds. So just keep talking.
And then you have like the emails about, from the cyber researchers themselves, basically saying, I don't think this really says what we need it to say, or says what you're suggesting that it says. And, casting down on their own findings to some extent, which was pretty bizarre, because then you go and you just submit it to the FBI, and there's the one email that was particularly inflammatory that just said, just look at this and see if it's plausible, not to see that it's absolutely true, just see.
Well, yeah, because Manos came out and was like, are we just doing this because we don't like Trump? Like he was sending the signals. And then they bring it to the FBI, which is like, to me, that's definitely just like an obstruction or whatever the charge would be. But then again, they take it back and they go to Congress again.
Yeah. And they were like
under Dan Jones and those guys.
Yeah.
Which is another thing. It's like, okay, that seems like you're fucking with Congress, like obstructing Congress, because you're wasting their time on this thing that the FBI already said, no, this isn't real. This didn't happen.
Well, I just find it, I mean, I said it earlier. I just don't understand, like, when they, like, Rodney Jofy, confidential human source for the FBI, he named David Dakin. He said he's the author of the Alpha Bank white paper. You should go interview him. We have another unnamed confidential human source, probably within the same group, that was like, yeah, it's David Dakin, you should go interview him. So like Allison Sands and I think Curtis Heide were like, okay, we want to go interview David Dakin and find out like where he got this data and stuff. And then the leadership of the FBI, who was said to be like gung ho, like super enthusiastic about, you know, these allegations, they say, no, don't go interview him. But then, you know, we still have all these open questions, obviously, from, you know, like FOIA documents I've gotten where it's like, okay, then the Department of Justice turn around and task these guys, according to the cyber researchers, to go provide like more information to the Department of Justice and eventually Special Counsel Robert Mueller. And in all that time and working apparently with these cyber researchers, they didn't go interview them about the Alpha Bank stuff, at least not to our knowledge. And it's like that just looks so bad just to have anybody that's connected to, like, first the false allegations of the secret communications channel, but then like, you know, they're connected to Hillary Clinton because Sussman's the one that brought you the data in the first place. So, you know, Sussman's connected to Hillary Clinton, you know, Sussman's connected to like the DNC hack investigation. And then you turn around and ask these guys to provide more information. Like, the optics are so atrocious because we had like Donald Trump out there for years saying it's just a bunch of angry Democrats, like the Mueller investigation's garbage. And then we would have these people go on TV and they'd be like, no, like Bob Mueller's a square guy. He's doing everything above board. You know, he's not going to play politics. He's not going to, you know, they're going to follow where the evidence leads and all this stuff. And it's like, okay, but you were relying on people you knew were tied to the Clinton campaign. Like,
but I don't know if they knew that. Like, I feel like it was going through DARPA. Like, that's how they do it. Like, it's very laundered. Like, you're going through DARPA to the DOJ to Mueller. Like, they might, like Mueller, those guys might not have known who they're getting the data from or the attribution from.
Well, there's going to be like source files, right? Because we know a couple of these guys were confidential human sources. So anytime they bring information, they're supposed to update the files with like, okay, what information did they bring? And then like anytime you're going to task them, like people should be opening those files and be like, oh, this guy brought us information on Alpha Bank or whatever like that. And then you would know. So,
but I don't know. Like, I mean, they weren't. So like Georgia Tech was working through DARPA. And at the time, did they know only like some of the FBI? Did they even know like did those like they knew Deon was like behind some of the Alpha Bank stuff, but then you go over back to Mueller, they're just going through DARPA, probably not directly to them. So it's like it's who knows like if they knew or not, but it's all laundered. But that's probably by design. I don't know.
That's a fair point. I mean, as an organization, they did know. They knew as an entity, the FBI knew they were connected to both, but whether like individual people within the Department of Justice or whoever knew that they were connected to both, it is like an open question that I wish we had the answer to.
Yeah, I mean, that like came up in like Crossfire Hurricane too, though, because like a bunch of Soma and Otten who interviewed Danchenko, like Soma was there like in the interview, and then he's gone, and they get a new case agent, and he doesn't really know anything about the interview, like really, and like the like Pianko is gone, like, and so I don't even know if they looked at, I can't remember from the trial, like if they looked at well, obviously, his handler, was it Helson? Is that his name? Can't remember.
Yeah, awesome.
But he didn't really look at his file, so like it's like, okay, this big event happened when they interviewed Danchenko the first time, but it got passed on to a new group that had no idea about this shit. So corrupt. Yeah, like what the hell?
Opened up based
on just went and got some more applications without knowing that Danchenko's completely just
made up information.
Yeah. Or yeah,
like $300,000 or something like that, or his time as a confidential human source, and then like he remained a confidential human source for like 4 or 5 months after like we identified him and like showed like he was making stuff up. It's like I think even after we identified him, I think his handler was actually pushing for like a bonus, if I remember from the trial. It's just it's just crazy.
Well, he was supposedly their best CHS for related to Russia, like their most highly prized one. It's like, this guy's garbage, dude.
Yeah. Yeah.
But like the same way, it's just like it could be that, okay, you get over to Mueller and they're like, oh, okay, yeah, we like these guys' data. We had no idea they're involved with any of that shit over there. But they weren't even looking. They didn't care. They barely looking to steal.
Yeah.
Like it was somebody was like compartmenting them off. Like, you can't know this stuff. Whoever that was, whoever is in, I don't know who's behind all like this Biden administration stuff. It's like, who is in charge? Who is designing all this crap? I don't know. There has to be like a group of people that are just completely demonic doing this stuff. They're probably like in the DOJ and CIA and all this other places, but I don't know.
I'm
It's
still
weird.
wondering about like Adam Schiff and like Mark Warner, Senator Mark Warner, because like they were out early, and like Schiff, like I'm just assuming like he was probably in contact with Fusion GPS and like pushing narratives, because like nothing was organic. Nothing he was saying was organic to the documents he was actually looking at. So he was getting a narrative from somewhere, and like, you know, he had to be coordinating with somebody. And then like Senator Mark Warner, I guess to his credit, he kind of slide away from what he was saying early on. But like in 2017, Mark Warner was out there like really dropping the hammer on the you know, the whole Russiagate narrative and stuff. And then like FOIA
once they found his like text between him and like Adam Waldman and stuff like that, then he was put on the back burner.
Yeah, I guess that's true too. I'm looking more at Mark Warner lately, because he's like he built a lot of money through like telecommunications.
Mm-hmm.
And like I actually got like a FOIA request. I did some on the ground investigation in Virginia a couple years ago now, and like I found out, and I put in a FOIA that like he actually has some type of connection to Victor and Sasha Appelman, who are,
I mean, that makes sense,
business partners. So that was pretty interesting. And it's like, was he getting information from
telecommunication?
Yeah. So
that would make okay, yeah. I didn't realize that, but that makes sense. But like that Senate Intel Committee was always like dirty.
Yeah.
And I don't know who's running those guys. I don't know how they get together and like figure out, oh, this is how we do our narrative or whatever. But they're pretty good at it. And it's like disgusting.
To your point earlier about like some people might not have known this or that, like the Senate, you just made the point. I mean, there's a couple different investigations. There's the new knowledge stuff on like the supposed Russian influence campaign that didn't exist. That like they made up the Twitter bot accounts and then like turned around and said, okay, this is your influence campaign, and they completely made it up. And then like the same people, like Daniel Jones, TDIP is kind of involved with New Knowledge in that respect. They were giving him funding. But then like Daniel Jones was also like leading the Alpha Bank investigation on behalf of the Senate. And based on the New Yorker article from a few years ago, it sounds like Rodney Joffe was leading like one team for Daniel Jones for the Senate investigation, I think. And then like Mikey Dickerson and Matt Weaver, with Dickerson also being involved in the Project Birmingham fake Twitter bot hoax. He was involved in the Alpha Bank stuff too. And obviously Dickerson was like a subcontractor for Fusion GPS. And it's just like, how in the hell can it all be coincidence? Like there has to be some coordination. I like who decided like, okay, we're gonna go find like Rodney Joffe to come tell us about Alpha Bank stuff. I don't get it.
Well, like he says, he has the bags of cash. He's the rich guy.
Yeah. I mean, on paper, I accept that he might be somebody to put on it. It's just I just don't get it, especially with Daniel Jones being at the center of it.
Yeah, I don't understand how that stuff works, or how people are that political. It's just like, how are you that big of a loser? It's like where you just lied for like this Democratic Party that doesn't do anything. It doesn't give it. They're like their policies do nothing for anybody. That's the biggest thing that I can't understand. It's like, why do you keep hanging? They just make the world way worse. None of their policies work. Their foreign policy turns every place into a freaking hot war. Like, what are you getting out of this? They must be getting tons of money on the backside somehow. Or like, how are you that political? You're just trying to get this party to. You're just playing like a team sport. You're just trying to win this game for nothing. For everybody else to just be worse off. It's insanity. I don't get it. I feel like DC, like I was talking about, like Mueller, like got changed in DC. There must be like something in the water. There must be something over there that just turns people into absolute demons, goblins, ghouls, uber ghouls. That's how I see it.
Yeah, I think I've gotten through all the questions that I had. I mean, is there anything else you wanted to get into?
Not really. Yeah, it's a good chat. I feel like we covered pretty much everything that I can think of.
Yeah, I think
all of my accomplishments, I guess.
Well, there's obviously like there's a lot more. I mean, I could have spent a day like collecting all your tweets up.
One of my favorites was definitely like it's a smaller one, but when I socially engineered Marcy to give up her source, that was one of my favorites. It was just fun to do. Huh?
You got to tell the story for everybody.
Oh yeah, so like Marcy Wheeler, Empty Wheel, she basically in 2018 or 17 was like, oh, I had this source in 2016 that I think was involved with Goosever 2.0. So she went to the FBI and then dimed on. She thought he was involved with Goosever 2.0 and the Shadow Brokers. So she went to the FBI and dimed on him like in 2017 or 18, I can't remember. And she kept on talking about that. She's like, oh yeah, Mueller's going to get him because I know a guy who was involved with the Goose. I don't understand how that adds up when she thinks this guy was involved with Trump somehow. How this is going to get Trump because she knows a guy that was Goosever 2.0 who's like her friend or whatever. And then like around the election in 2020, she came out with an article like giving more information about her. Like, oh, he was in the army or whatever. I can't remember. But she was like, she posted all this stuff about how he was being weird on her website and how he was like posting on her site as like different names and whatever, and then like leaving email addresses. Like when you post on her site, you have to post like an email address, but only she can see it. So he like posted like Goosever 2.0 or something at like KGB in there. So I'm like, I need to figure out who this guy is and who her source is that she gave up, because she gave like a little bit descriptive information. I think that he was in the army. He was like I forget, whatever. Oh, and he worked for like a cyber company that used to be owned by the KGB or something. It was started by like the KGB or something like that. It's like, oh, this guy worked for a company that was owned by Russia, whatever. So I was just like trying to figure it out, but like to try to get her to divulge who her source was, I was like going into her comments and like posting email addresses that she would understand. I forget how I did it. But anyways, it would be like some other like hacker guy or whatever, and it wasn't working. But then I went back like into who was back in Twitter, who was commenting on her like post back then, who she was in contact with, and I found like this guy like at MLA 1316 or something like that, who like now is like some like weather reporter, but it's like defunct. But then I looked like in the Wayback Machine, and it's like, oh, this guy used to be Michael Adams. He was like a master sergeant or something like that in the army. Like everything added up. He worked for like Luxoft, who was owned by like Russia. So then finally, like I went onto her website and I posted like just as Michael Adams, like, and then some email address, and then like that she would like understand. Then the comment was like something related to what he told her, some post he did to her at some point, and then so it would jog her memory that it was that, oh, that's probably Michael Adams. So then she made like a post like, oh, my source Phil, who she called him, has been monitoring my like website, had just posted that. And when I saw that, I just started laughing out loud because I'm like, oh my god, I used the trick that he was using before, but I used it on her and she fell for it again. So like at that point, like I'm like, oh, okay, it is Michael Adams, like your source that you added. So then I made like a thread, and she was like, and she like admitted that, yeah, that's what it was. But then she like deleted that post. Like it wasn't actually Michael Phil. It was like some troll or something like that who was me. But that was funny. I really enjoyed doing that because I wanted to figure it out because I was like, oh, like is this guy actually connected to the story? Which I don't know. That's
Yeah.
that's what's weird. Like, and then like I showed that to Craig Murray, who said he got like some information from some guy like at American University, and he definitely didn't say it wasn't him.
Yeah, well, you had a really interesting theory. It might have been a couple years ago now, because I don't even know if you want to get into this or not, but he was like traveling around like
Yeah.
Trump, right?
So I think he might have had the Vodafone,
Yeah.
which I don't know, but that would be interesting if he was the guy, because he was going to like Trump like events and setting up I forget what they're called, stingrays or something like that on Secret Service satellites or whatever. And then then he would travel to New York, and I looked at where he was, and it might have been like close to Trump Tower or something like that. But I don't know why, because he kept on saying like this is going to be important and like showing like screenshots or whatever to Marcy, and it's like, did he have the Yoda phone? Yoda phone, is that what, yeah, Yoda phone.
Yeah.
And was he going to places around Trump with this Yoda phone to try to get him connected to the GRU or whatever to make the Alpha Bank thing work? I think it's a potential,
It
because we
is.
don't know why that Yoda phone was on there or whatever. But
I remember doing a deep dive on that screen name that you mentioned, and when I did, like I found like, because I think one of the specific episodes that they mentioned was like, I think in Grand Rapids there was like some
Mhm.
Trump rally, and when I did
Mhm.
a deep dive on that guy, like I found like he had some, at least some loose connections to like people that were connected to that area or something. So
Yeah, I know what you're talking about. Yeah, because he did have like some connection to the hospital or whatever.
yeah, it was something weird, but
Yeah.
obviously that's speculative, people. So we're not accusing them or anything. But
Yeah. Well, I don't know if Michael Adams is still alive. He like I think he has like cancer or something like that. But I don't know. I don't know if anybody ever reached out to him. I remember because he did like a story on Lawfare blog, and like I think like last like fall, Benjamin Wittes came out and was like, we don't actually we don't actually take anything this guy says seriously. We probably shouldn't have like published this. We've learned more information about Michael Adams, and we're not confident with his reporting for Lawfare. I'm like, yeah, but maybe not. I don't know. I don't know what happened to him. It's like crazy that, because Glenn Greenwald and like Aaron Masse have like talked about him, but I don't know if they ever went and interviewed him.
I don't think I saw that.
They've talked about him like, oh, he was just some elderly cancer patient that Marcy went to to the FBI about, but I don't think they ever interviewed him. Who
Yeah,
knows?
it's crazy.
Who
Uh,
knows?
let's see what else. I don't think I had anything else planned. I think I've taken, we're at hour and a half on the dot right now.
Oh, on the dot.
Yeah. So I think we're probably good to go and probably end it here. But I mean, like I said, I really appreciate you doing this. And
Absolutely. I
well,
could talk about this stuff all day
yeah. Well, hopefully
and
we're going to
more.
get some documents and some more disclosures. We'll have some more chats in the future.
Yeah, I was gonna say, like, good luck with all of your endeavors. Hopefully, you pierce something. Hopefully,
Yeah,
you're successful.
I've got enough irons in the fire that as long as like one of them hits, like should get something good. So
Bullseye.
here we go. All righty, I'm gonna end it here.
Sweet.
Fool, thank you again, and everybody have a
It
good
was
night.
fun.
It was fun. All right.
Reminiscing. Hopefully, yeah. Hopefully, we get some more stuff to dig into because I'm like semi-retired now. I feel like.
Yeah, I feel like there's nothing else that I could do that would like measure up to Rushgate stuff, and I don't
I
have the
know.
motivation to go do it. So,
Yep.
all righty, fool.
All right, dude. Yeah. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, thank you.
For sure. Have a good night, everybody.